Maria Liu works in a toy factory in China. She is an owner of the factory, called Dongguan Yaran Li Toys. These days, her factory floor is very quiet. This is not normal. Usually, the machines make a lot of noise. Now, many workstations are empty. Workers have gone home because there are not enough orders. American customers are not buying as many toys as before. Maria is 33 years old. She built this factory with her older brother. She feels worried. "We cannot do anything," she says. She watches her few remaining workers. They are making toy pigs and foxes for children in America. Maria does not know what will happen next. She worries about the future of her business. Far away in California, Matt Rowlands feels the same worry. He is the boss of Dragon Glassware. His company sells special glasses and cups. They work with big brands like Barbie. Matt remembers when he heard about the new taxes on goods from China. He was at a big show in Las Vegas. Everyone there was shocked and afraid. "It was very surprising," he said. "People thought the new taxes would be bad, but they were much worse than anyone thought." These new taxes make things very expensive for Matt's business. He calls it a very bad situation for small companies. Matt Rowlands is like thousands of other American importers. Maria Liu is like thousands of other Chinese factory owners. They are all caught in a difficult situation. This problem is more than just about money. It is about people's jobs and their lives. This situation shows the human side of big economic news. There are big numbers about trade, but also many people who are worried about their work and future. Businesses have already been through hard times before. Now they face an even bigger storm. The world of trade is changing, and many people are feeling the effects. 2. The big numbers. After learning about Maria and Matt, it is important to understand the bigger picture. This picture involves very large numbers and a changing global economy. For a long time, the United States bought many more goods from China than China bought from the United States. For example, in one recent year, the U.S. bought around $439 billion worth of goods from China. In contrast, China bought only about $144 billion from the U.S. This big difference, roughly $295 billion, is known as a trade deficit. American policymakers had been unhappy with this large imbalance for a long time. To address this, the American government decided to put new taxes on Chinese goods. These taxes are known as tariffs. The main idea behind this plan was straightforward. If products from China became very expensive due to these taxes, then American shoppers would naturally choose to buy things made in their own country instead. This action was intended to help American factories grow and create more jobs at home. The increase in these taxes began with a relatively small amount. In February of 2025, a 10% tax was first applied to almost all goods imported from China. This step was part of a promise made by the American leader to make trade more balanced. However, this initial tax did not stay low for long. What started as a measured approach quickly escalated. Over the next few months, the taxes on Chinese products grew very quickly. By April of that same year, the specific tax rate for Chinese goods had climbed to a high of 145%. This figure was much higher than many businesses had expected, causing widespread concern. Financial experts say that when a tax on goods goes above 100%, its purpose changes. It is no longer just about collecting money for the government. Instead, such a high tax is designed to stop trade almost completely. Erica York, a vice president from the Tax Foundation, explained this idea clearly. She stated that, generally, if you get north of a triple-digit tariff, you are cutting off most trade. This means that only very specific items, without any other choice for buyers, might still be traded. For nearly everything else, these very high taxes effectively closed the doors to trade between the two largest economies in the world. This made the future very uncertain for millions of workers and businesses across both countries. 3. The factory floor. Maria Lau walked through her toy factory. The usual busy sounds were gone. Now it was very quiet. She heard only a few sewing machines working. Many workstations were empty, and their operators were sent home. Orders from American customers had dropped a lot, like puddles drying in the summer sun. Maria felt very worried. She did not know what the next 3 months would bring for her company. Her business, Dongguan Yarinli Toys, made soft toys like pink pigs and orange foxes. She started it 5 years ago with her older brother. They worked hard to build a good company and strong connections with American clients. But this year, orders from the United States fell by nearly 30%. This was a big problem, more than just numbers. It meant old business friendships were now difficult. One of her biggest customers, who usually bought 25,000 toy dolls at once, asked for something impossible. They wanted a 20% price cut on all new orders. This was to help with the new taxes on Chinese goods. Maria usually made a 30% profit on her products. This money helped pay for materials and her workers' salaries. If she cut the price by 20%, almost all her profit would disappear. It would be very hard to keep the factory running. This was a terrible choice: lose the customer or face financial ruin. This difficult situation was not just for Maria. Thousands of other factory owners in China faced the same challenge. For many years, they built their businesses to be fast and reliable. Now they worried about their very survival. Before, they planned for big expansions and bought new machines for the future. Now they could only focus on surviving day by day. It was almost impossible to guess what demand would be like next quarter. The changes also hurt the factory workers deeply. Many people lost their jobs, and the factory, once full of life, now had empty chairs and worried faces. The quiet felt heavy. The problem spread further, too. Companies that supplied raw materials to factories saw their orders go down. Truck companies that moved goods to the ports had fewer jobs. Even small shops and restaurants that served the factory workers felt the impact. Maria watched her remaining workers, women in blue hairnets, carefully finishing the toys. She knew their families depended on this work. But planning for the future was very uncertain. The fast changes in trade made long-term business decisions impossible. The usual cycle of making toys for American holidays was broken. Factories were in a hard place, too late for last season and too early for the next. Maria hoped for things to get better, but she saw no clear path ahead. 4. A new place to work. Many companies found it very difficult to keep their factories in China. The new, very high taxes on Chinese goods made it too expensive to sell their products to American buyers. Because of this, businesses started to look for new places to make their goods. This strategic plan was called the China Plus One strategy. It meant they would keep some small operations in China, but primarily open new factories in different countries to avoid the heavy tariffs. This shift happened quickly. Many companies began to move their production lines away from China. They often chose countries in Southeast Asia, such as Vietnam, Cambodia, and India, as popular new manufacturing sites. Vietnam was a favored choice for many reasons. It had lower labor costs, which helped reduce expenses. Its location near China made it easy to get raw materials and parts. Vietnam's infrastructure, like roads and ports, was also improving. The Vietnamese government actively welcomed foreign businesses, making setup easier. However, many new factories in Vietnam were still managed by Chinese companies. They often used components from China and had Chinese experts. This created a kind of efficient, shadow Chinese manufacturing presence, but without the high taxes. Cambodia offered even lower labor costs than Vietnam. It attracted companies making labor-intensive goods, like clothes or simple electronics. But Cambodia also had challenges. Its infrastructure was less developed, and it had fewer experienced factory workers. This meant setting up new factories often took more money and time than expected. India represented another big option. It had a huge domestic market and established manufacturing in areas like medicines and textiles. The Indian government's Make in India program also encouraged new factories. Yet moving production to India was often difficult due to complex government rules and a different business culture compared to China's streamlined environment. Starting a factory in a new country was not easy. Companies faced many challenges: building new facilities, finding and training new workers, and learning local laws. It often took a long time to get everything running smoothly. The move also brought a sad human cost. When factories left China, many Chinese workers lost their jobs. Factory owners often had long and good relationships with their employees. It was very hard for these owners to tell their loyal workers they were no longer needed. One factory owner described the emotional difficulty of informing his team about layoffs while hiring new people in Vietnam. He said, "These people have worked with us for years, but we have no choice. The tariffs make it impossible to keep everyone employed here." This quote showed the real impact of these changes on many people's lives. 5. Looking for new buyers. After many American orders stopped, Chinese factory owners like Maria Lau faced a big problem. They needed to find new people to buy their toys and other goods. But this was very hard. The American market, where people buy consumer goods, is the biggest in the world. It is a very important place to sell products. American people, even though they are a small part of the world's population, buy a lot of products. They spend much more money than people in other countries. This makes America a special place for factories that make things for people to use. Also, American buyers often like new and different products. A factory could make a new item, sell it online, and many people might buy it quickly. This kind of market is hard to find anywhere else. So Chinese factories tried to sell their goods to other places. Europe was one option. European countries have many people with money to spend. But selling there has its own problems. Europe has many different countries, each with its own language, its own rules, and its own tastes. It takes a long time and a lot of effort to understand all these differences. The rules for selling products can be very difficult and change from one country to another. Other parts of the world, like the Middle East, Africa, or Latin America, were also looked at. These places might have growth in the future, but for now, they do not have the same number of people ready to buy many different kinds of goods. Their roads, ports, and other systems for trade are also not as good as in America. Some Chinese factories thought about selling more products inside China. This sounded like a good idea. China has a very big population. But this also had challenges. Chinese people often save more money than they spend. Also, when factories sell within China, they often do not make as much money as they did when selling to America. Chinese brands often earn less profit. Even with these problems, Chinese manufacturers knew they could not just stop selling to America. The American market was too important. The trade war made everything more difficult and costly, but demand for Chinese products did not disappear. Instead, buying and selling became a long, complex, and risky process for everyone involved. Factories had to find new, harder ways to keep their businesses going, still hoping to reach buyers across the ocean. 6. Will the jobs come home? The American government hoped that putting very high taxes on Chinese goods would make manufacturing jobs come back to the United States. The main idea was simple. If products from China became too expensive to buy, American companies would choose to make those same things at home instead. This was supposed to create many new jobs for American workers and help make trade fairer. However, bringing these jobs back has proved to be much harder and more complicated than planned. The types of jobs that moved to China over the last several decades were often labor-intensive tasks, like putting small pieces together repeatedly. These jobs needed many workers, but less specialized training. Today, when companies try to set up manufacturing again in the United States, they do things differently. They often invest heavily in advanced machines, robots, and automated systems. These modern factories need fewer human workers and demand different, more specialized skills, such as operating and maintaining complex machinery, rather than simple assembly. For example, a business owner named Matt Rowlands, who sells specialty drinkware, notes how hard it is to find skilled craftspeople in the U.S. for highly specific tasks, like making complex glass molds. Some experts in China have been doing this kind of work for 40 years, building up unique knowledge that is not easily found elsewhere. Building new manufacturing facilities in the United States also faces many practical problems. It takes a very long time to get new factories up and running because of strict rules about land use, environmental protection, and building permits. What might take only a few months to build and open in China could take several years in America. This slow process makes it very difficult for businesses to plan and react quickly to changes in what customers want or what the market needs. Even when some production does move back to the U.S., it is often not a complete return of manufacturing. Many times, only the very last steps of making a product, like final assembly or packaging, happen in American factories. Most of the parts and raw materials still come from other countries, including China or other parts of Asia. So it is not always a full reshoring of the entire production process. Instead, it creates a new, often more expensive and complex way of using the existing global supply chains. A report by the consulting firm Kearney found that the movement of manufacturing back to the U.S. has not been as strong as hoped. In fact, imports from low-cost regions in Asia were still growing faster than the output of U.S. factories. This shows that despite the high taxes, American manufacturing output is not always increasing as expected. The dream of truly bringing all jobs home is much more intricate than just raising prices on imports. The modern global system of making goods involves many countries and many different steps, and changing that system quickly is very difficult. The new factories that are built are often highly automated, which changes the kind and number of jobs created, often resulting in fewer jobs for the same output. This situation has shown how deeply connected the world's production systems are. Simply making imported goods expensive does not easily undo decades of global supply chain development. The jobs that might return often look very different from the jobs that left, mainly due to new technology and more efficient ways of manufacturing. 7. A new plan for China. China's leaders and business owners now think about a different future. For many years, China grew by trading a lot with the world, especially with the United States. This brought jobs and new ideas, making China a strong economic power. But recent trade problems have changed this. Now, China is making a new plan for its economy. This new plan is called decoupling. It means China wants to rely less on other countries. It aims to be more independent, especially in important technology. China is working hard to make its own computer chips, software, and key parts. It is also looking for ways to use its own financial systems, reducing reliance on others for banking. Even studies and working with foreign researchers are becoming harder to continue. Chinese companies are also changing their business plans. They are preparing for a future where selling goods to America might be much harder. Some factories are trying to sell more products inside China. Others are investing in new machines to make very high-value items, hoping people will still buy them even with high import taxes. This is a big change from decades of making goods mainly for export. This shift affects many people in China. It makes people think about their country needing to be strong on its own. This idea helps new government rules be accepted. However, this new plan also brings risks for China's economy. The country already faces problems with housing prices, which have caused many people to lose money. Local governments also have much debt. If less trade means fewer factory jobs and housing problems continue, people might spend less. This could slow the economy even more, a problem some call a deflationary spiral. Job losses in big factory areas could mean migrant workers must return home without work. This is tough for many families. People worldwide are watching this. If China's economy slows, it could affect other countries. China buys many materials and sells many goods globally. Countries hoping for new factories from China might find China buys less from them. In short, China is building its own economic system. It will work alongside, but less with, the American economic system. For business owners, success now means understanding not just how to make things, but also how world politics affects trade. This new time is changing how countries trade and work together forever. 8. The end of an era. The world of global trade is changing forever. The close economic connection between the United States and China is coming to an end. For many years, these two big economies were deeply linked. Chinese factories made countless goods for American buyers, and millions of jobs on both sides depended on this trade. But now, that strong bond is breaking apart. New taxes on Chinese goods, reaching a very high 145%, have made trade almost impossible. Factories like Maria Lau's toy company in Dongguan now feel an unsettling quiet. Orders from America have greatly dropped. American business owners, such as Matt Rowlands of Dragon Glassware, describe this as a doomsday scenario for small companies. For everyone involved, long-term planning has become impossible, replaced by a focus on short-term survival. This change is leading to a more divided global economy. Many companies are moving their production out of China, often to countries like Vietnam and Cambodia. This China Plus One plan aims to find new places to make products without the high taxes. However, it is very hard for Chinese factories to find new customers to replace American ones, as the U.S. market was the world's biggest. Also, the American government's hope of bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. has not worked as planned. China is now preparing for a future with less trade with America. This decoupling means China wants to rely more on its own technology and domestic markets. This big change brings new dangers for China's economy and its people. Across the globe, people and businesses are working hard to survive in this new reality. They are finding new ways to operate and adapt to an economic landscape where political choices greatly affect trade. The deep connections that once shaped global trade are unraveling, forming parallel economic systems. This new era will impact millions of workers and businesses worldwide for decades to come. In this new world, who do you think will be the biggest winners and losers of this trade war?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.